In this video, I'm going to talk to you about 3 common mistakes that a lot of piano players make that make their playing sound amateur. And the sad thing is, you don't really need a lot of technical ability. With just some beginner level knowledge of the piano, you can sound very good, and you can even have a professional sound. But a lot of pianists make these 3 common mistakes, and it keeps them from getting all that they can out of the ability that they have. And what's even worse is that some even accomplished pianists, although they have some really technical skills, when they make these mistakes, they still sound amateur. So 3 mistakes that you gotta avoid, and even with just a little bit of experience and a beginner level knowledge of the piano, if you avoid these 3 mistakes, it'll make your playing sound professional. And on top of that, if you are making some of these mistakes in your playing, if you take a few simple steps to correct them, it's going to really make your playing sound a lot better instantly. So the first common mistake that I see piano players make is not giving enough attention to timing, or having sloppy or choppy timing. Timing is more important than we realize, especially when we first get started. So if I were to sit down and play Amazing Grace, just because I'm familiar with how the song should go, I'll just kind of play it the way I know it without giving strict attention to the timing. The timing is it's in 3/4, and all the notes should fall in their right beats. But if I'm just kind of playing it off the top of my head and not really worrying about the timing, I'm going to mess it up. And if people are trying to sing along, or I'm playing with other instruments, they're going to say, "Man, I can't follow you," because the timing is all over the place. One thing that'll help you tremendously with your timing is, one, play with the metronome if that helps you. A lot of pianos have them right on, a lot of keyboards have them right on the piano. You can get a metronome on your phone, an app easily. But another way, it's a little bit more musical to play with some timing, like a metronome, is to play with a backing track or play with other instruments, and where we all are forced to keep time together. Another thing that's very helpful is to count. So if I'm playing Amazing Grace, I would want to count 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And that forces me to discipline myself to stay within the timing. A lot of times the reason why the timing gets all messed up is, especially as church pianists, hymn players, improvising and playing in church, when we start to take liberties and add to the arrangement, especially when we're playing out of the hymn book, and we want to learn how to play fills and left hand walks and runs and right hand runs and things like that. We start to throw these things in, and we forget to make sure they're in time. So if you're going to do a right hand run, it's very important that you're conscious of the timing. And if there's 16th notes, we got to make sure it lines up. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1, 2, 3. And so just sitting down and thinking, oh, that's a good place to do a little arpeggio or something like that, and then not realizing I just got off timing. In fact, that was one of my biggest mistakes when I first started learning, and I started adding and improvising and playing, filling in my hymn arrangements, is I would play, and I was learning all these neat things to do, octave runs and things like that, left hand walks. And I was learning how to put these in, but as I was concentrating so hard on adding to the arrangement, I was losing time. I mean, bad. And I had to really kind of take some steps back and learn to fit these things within the meter. And I had to fix some of those mistakes. One other thing that's really going to help you is to record yourself playing and listen to yourself. Now, I play at our church, and our church about 6 years ago started live streaming the services. And so a lot of times I'll go back and listen to what I played. And sometimes it's painful because I realize that I made some mistakes. I got off timing. And so listening to yourself, recording yourself, and then listening back is going to help you so much, because you're going to start to see things that you didn't pick up while you were playing. It's kind of like looking in the mirror. And so I encourage you to do that. And nowadays it's so easy to do. You can do it on your smartphone. Just simple, just really easy for anybody to record themselves and then kind of check some things that you may not notice in the moment. And the second mistake that I see a lot of pianists make is they just got one level of loudness that they know how to play, and one level of intensity, and one touch. It's just all they've got. And so when they sit down, everything is the same level. And there's no ebb and flow. There's no build, and there's no building up and pulling back. There's no nuance to the playing. And what happens a lot is pianists they have a lot of ability. They're actually really good, but they fail to do this. It makes their skills still sound amateur. And whereas somebody with just a little bit of talent or a little bit of ability, they can't play as much, they can't play as well, but they play with more feeling, and they're much more pleasant to listen to. So which one would you rather hear? If I kind of play flashy, but with no emotion, say... You say, well, wow, that's neat. You're playing a lot of notes. You've got full chords, full octaves, but playing at that same level constantly, you can see that's quickly going to start to become monotonous, even annoying. There's got to be some nuance. There's got to be some ebb and flow. Now I'll play it, and I'll play much less and a much more simpler arrangement, but you'll see how much more interesting and more pleasing this is to listen to. I played maybe half the notes, didn't play nearly as much when I played that verse, but it's much more pleasing and much more interesting. I'd rather listen to somebody who plays with some feeling and emotion and plays less than someone who just playing lots of notes but no expression. In this case as well, listening to yourself perform or play is going to help you so much, because when you sit down and you play, you may think that you are playing in an expressive way. But just because you feel expressive doesn't mean you're communicating that expression. One thing that I heard many years ago from a piano teacher was that when you play the piano, you shouldn't play as if you're banging or like you're like a typewriter, like you're just kind of hitting at the notes, but rather think of yourself like kneading bread, and that's the kind of the feeling you want to have in your fingers, like you're kind of massaging the keys rather than banging the keys. And you get a much more gentle touch where you need it, and a much more heavier touch when that's needed. But when everything is typewriter level, then you get this real heavy, just monotonous tone. Whereas if you kind of take the approach of, like I'm kneading bread, if you think in that way, it'll help you be much more expressive. And the last mistake that I see a lot of pianists make is lack of attention to how their chords are played. And when we talk about how chords are played, that's called voicing the chords. A lot of pianists think that if it's a C chord, as long as I hit the notes in the C chord, C, E, and G, well, that's all there is to it. And it doesn't really matter where or how or what order or what spread, because I'm getting this notes in the C chord. But we want to start to be deliberate about how we voice our chords, and it'll take your playing level to it'll take your playing to a whole new level. So what someone might do is, if they're playing the chord progression, say C, G, A minor, F. If they don't really care about how to voice their chords, they would do it like this: C, G, A minor, F. And that's easy because they're all in root position, and we just, we can keep our hands basically in the same position here, and we just bounce around and get to those different chords. Say if you're playing the octave in the bass, you kind of do this. Everything's in root position. But a much better way would be to play our chords in different inversions to keep them close together. Rather than bouncing, we could use different inversions of those chords to stay close together. So an inversion of a chord just means we play the notes but in a different order. So if C, E, and G, this is called root position. If we were to rearrange the notes and put the C up here, so it's still C, E, and G, but now it's C, E, G. So we've got E, G, C. That's the order. That's an inversion. That's first inversion. Now we rearrange the notes again. We can put the E on top. So now we've got G, C, E. Same notes, but now a different inversion. This is second inversion. And this is back to root. So we can do this with all the chords. Any chord can be inverted. And if we can find inversions that are close to each other, then it's much more pleasing to the ear and it sounds much more professional. So if I were to play the same progression, C, G, A minor, F, C, but instead of going to G here, I'm going to go to the G here. Because now my hand doesn't hardly have to move, and I can keep this top note the same, and it'll sound much more smooth and connected. And then if I'm going to go to the A minor, then I can just move to this voicing of the A minor, C, E, A. So there's the A minor chord. I put it in first inversion, and we're close again. And then to go to the F, notice what happens here with it from the A minor to F. I can take, this is the F chord, F, A, C. If I put it in second inversion, C, F, A, I'm real close to that A minor to F. And everything's real close and connected. This will make this chord progression sound 10 times better. Check it out. And there's lots of other ways you can do this as well. Let me take and put the C chord up here. So I'm going to try to keep all my chords close together. That sounds beautiful, as opposed to so inversions is just one way that you can start to give more attention to the voicing of the chord. But another way is how you spread out the notes. And so the left hand quite often is played in these simple triads. And this is a great way to start when you're a beginner. If you're going to play hymns and you're going to play chords in the left hand and melody in the right hand, nothing wrong with this. Of course, we want to build on this foundation and start to add more to it. But chords in the left hand quite often are just played like this, as triads. But an even better option, and this is my favorite way to voice chords in my left hand, and that is to play the entire chord, C, E, and G, but in a spread triad voicing. Watch how this is done. We take the root, and we play the fifth, so that's C and G, if it's a C chord, C, G, and then we're going to play the third also, which is the E, but we're going to spread it out. We're going to play it up here. This is a beautiful way to play a chord. I love to play my chords that way in the left hand, and I have enough of a reach. My hands are big enough to be able to play that. A lot of people can't, though, so what you can do is break them up, just like that. I honestly could just play spread triads and use that for a whole accompaniment. I think it's just so beautiful that I could just play for an entire accompaniment. You notice you don't need hardly any ability, technical ability, or advanced playing level to be able to do that, but it sounds beautiful. So just giving a little bit more attention to how we voice our chords and spreading them out, playing in these fifth intervals or this spread triad voicing, or taking our right hand and keeping the inversions close together. It's going to go from amateur sounding to professional sounding. I've heard many professional pianists that are 10 times better than I am, but when they sit down to accompany a singer, they don't do much more than this. Along with voicing chords, I'll throw in this as well, the lowest sounding note determines the flavor of the chord. And so if we've always got our chords over their root note, they're always going to have this very stable, locked-in sound. You hear that root in the bass, and we hear our harmony ringing out. It's a C chord over its root. It's real clear, unambiguous. But if we were to use other notes in the C chord as a bass note, it changes the entire flavor of the chord. And so a little bit more attention to, maybe I want to use the third in the bass. That's a very beautiful way to play a C chord in a lot of situations. Or if you play a C chord over its fifth, it's kind of got a bit more unsettled sound. You can use this just like when we play our chord progressions and we're keeping our right hand all close together. You can also use different inversions in the left hand to kind of glue our progressions together in the same way. So watch how I play 1, 5, 6, 4 by using different inversions. So here's the 1 chord over the C. I'm going to go to the 5 chord, which is G, and I'm going to play it over its third. So my left hand is just walking down. And if that means if the 6th chord is next, I can go to the 6th chord, which is the A minor, over its root. And then if the 4 chord is next, I can walk down to that 4 chord. So I've got this descending bass line, which now makes it even more smooth and connected. My right hand chords are close, my left hand is moving in a logical way, and it all sounds real smooth and connected now. So that's just one way you can use inversions to keep everything connected and make it sound smooth and flowing rather than choppy and broken apart. So if we'll start to think in these terms, not just be satisfied, well, it's a C chord and I'm just going to hammer out the C chord, but how are we going to play that C chord? Even in the right hand, we can opt to leave notes out and just play maybe an open voicing in the right hand, and a different spread in the left hand. That right there is it's much different. It's a warmer sound. I got this E down here, kind of playing this interval with this open voicing here. That makes all the difference in the world. And then we can do that. The same thing with all the chords. There's an F chord, spread triad in the left hand, open voicing in the right hand. I'm just giving more attention to how I voice the chord. One word of caution, though, and I've mentioned this before. Keep this in mind, though. If you're going to play the third of a chord in the left hand, it's good to leave it out of the right hand, usually, because if you play it in the right hand and the left hand, it kind of weakens the sound of the chord, and it starts to lean more towards a whole different sound. So if that's the sound you want, I mean, it's more like a minor 3 sound. And so if that's the sound you want, well, fine. But most of the time, when we leave the third in the right hand, it kind of weakens what we're trying to accomplish with that with that chord. So the third of a chord is just a middle note when it's in root position. The C chord is C, E, G. The third is the E. And if we're going to play the E down in the bass, then we probably won't want to put it up here. I'll leave it out. That gives me that opportunity to double the octave, play this open voicing. That's a beautiful chord right there. Open voicing in the right hand, C, G, C, and then that third in the bass. I love the sound of it. Especially, that's a great way to lead into the 4 chord. See how that led right in? We went in the left hand. Beautiful. All these different sounds can come out of just simple basic chords once we start to give more attention to how we voice them. And lastly, I'll throw this in as a bonus. One other mistake that can really cause a good pianist to sound amateur is overusing, misusing, or failing to use the damper pedal, the sustain pedal. And this is a question that pianists get a lot. How do I pedal? It is a broad topic. There's a lot of different things we could say about how to pedal. But one simple thing is you should use it because it can really make your playing sound much more smooth and connected. But you shouldn't overuse it or else it'll make your playing sound all muddy. So a good rule of thumb is when the chord changes, then release and press the pedal again. There's that release that kind of stops all those strings from ringing, and then push it again and it'll start to sustain those sounds again. So when you push down that pedal, it keeps everything sustained. You let up, it stops it. And so that's good when I'm playing a C chord. I would keep it down as I play over a C chord. But then the chord changes to an F maybe. I'm going to release and then press again to reset all that harmony. And I can now resonate over the F chord. Now say I go to the G chord. I'm going to release and then press again for the G chord. So a good cheat for how to pedal is just watch the bass note of a song. In the hymn book, when the bass note changes, that's a good hint that we probably ought to be pedaling there, releasing and pressing again. Because the bass note usually follows the chord. If it's a G note in the bass, it's probably a G chord. And if it's a C note in the bass, it's probably a C chord. And so if the first measure has a G note in the bass, and then the next measure has a C, it's probably going from G chord to C chord. And so just watching the bass note will help you to know when to pedal. And if you keep the pedal, you just mash down on the pedal through a whole song, you're going to have all these chords ringing out over each other, and it makes it sound very muddy and diluted. But if you fail to use it at all, then you can sound choppy. And so either extreme will make you sound amateur. So don't overuse it, but don't fail to use it also. So there's 3 mistakes that a lot of pianists make when they have enough skill to sound good, but they make some of these mistakes and it just keeps them still sounding like they're a beginner. So you may be a beginner, but you don't have to sound like one if you can just get really strong timing and a real good strong sense of rhythm. You get that, and then play with some expression and check yourself by listening to yourself and get good at communicating through your expression at the keyboard. And then also learn to give a little bit more attention to where we play our chords, how we voice chords, and then get good at using the pedal. And if you just do these 4 things, it'll make your playing sound 10 times better. And you don't need any more skill than you've already got. Just fix those mistakes. If this lesson was a help to you, hit the like button right now and subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this. Also, check the link in the description. I have a free PDF for beginner to intermediate left-hand patterns. Great for church pianists to start learning and automating some left-hand rhythms and patterns that you can use over hymns and worship songs. That's free to you. The link is in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.